Hello brother and sister, this is Samcut Technology. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we will see about Apple iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus review, minor upgrades for a worthy contender. The Apple iPhone 14 is the least expensive current iPhone you can buy, and that $200 savings over an iPhone 14 Pro is its main appeal. It's the first iPhone to consider if you don't want to splash out on an iPhone 14 Pro and don't need the 3 cameras or always-on display the extra money buys. The iPhone 14 is a worthwhile contender, even if its external design appears largely the same as last year's model. Inside, it is an all-new handset. The larger iPhone 14 Plus, the first 6.7-inch iPhone in. The iPhone 14 starts at $799 and has a 6.1-inch display, the same size as on the iPhone 14 Pro. Its processor makes a lateral move, coming up to the standard iPhone from last year's iPhone 13 Pro. This year's model also gets a refreshed main camera and noticeably improved front camera. The iPhone 14 Plus starts at $899, $100 more than the standard 14, and has a larger 6.7-inch display, the same as found on the $1,099 iPhone Pro Max. Aside from its larger size, larger battery, and higher price, the Plus matches the regular iPhone in features and design, including that processor from the iPhone 13 Pro. New to all of this year's iPhones are a handful of features like improved computational photography, the ability to detect that you've been in a car crash, enhanced video stabilization, and even the ability to send emergency messages via satellite. Read on for my take on whether the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus are worth the rather substantial investment. Apple iPhone 14. Technical specifications, price $799 and up. Cameras, rear 12-megapixel ultra-wide, 12-megapixel wide, front 12-megapixel processor. Apple A15 Bionic display, 6.1-inch OLED 60Hz display, 2532 by 1170 pixels, 460 pixels per inch. Storage, 128 GB, up to 512 GB, internal battery, up to 20 hours. Video playback. Dimensions, 5.8 by 2.8 by 0.3 inches. Weight 6.1 ounces. And the other one, Apple iPhone 14 Plus. Technical specifications, price $899 and up. Cameras, rear 12-megapixel ultra-wide, 12-megapixel wide, front 12-megapixel processor. Apple A15 Bionic display, 6.1-inch OLED 60Hz display, 2778 by 1284 pixels, 458 pixels per inch. Storage, 128 GB, up to 512 GB, internal battery, up to 26 hours. Video playback. Dimensions, 6.3 by 3.1 by 0.3 inches. Weight 7.2 ounces. Best 4, great safety features, much better front camera, strong performance, skip because, overly familiar design, underwhelming upgrades. Apple iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus, design. If the iPhone 14 seems familiar, that's because it is. In almost every regard, the Apple iPhone 14 looks identical to its predecessor. The iPhone 14 Plus looks just the same except for its larger size. Same colors, same finishes, just a bigger version. The iPhone 14s have a glossy chassis, unlike the matte finish found on the iPhone Pro models. Both have an aluminum frame. The standard iPhone 14 weighs 1.2 ounces lighter than the iPhone 14 Pro, a weight difference you can actually notice when holding the phone in one hand. Similarly, the iPhone 14 Plus weighs 1.3 ounces less than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, an even more palpable difference. The iPhone 14 Plus is a really big phone. So, just like with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you need to try it in your hand before you buy if you haven't had a phone this big before. It's not suitable for smaller hands. This is the same style of cutout first seen on the iPhone 13 Pro to accommodate the front cameras. While very different in appearance from the iPhone 14 Pro's small capsule-like cutout, it is an improvement over the iPhone 13's design. The new main camera on the iPhone 14 has a bigger lens. As a result, and for the sake of symmetry, Apple has enlarged both of the rear cameras, which remain in a diagonal arrangement. For these reasons, you're going to need a new case for the iPhone 14, last year's cases won't fit. Same applies to the iPhone 14 Plus, the cameras are the same size as on the 14, but they are proportionally smaller on the larger phone. US models of the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus ditch SIM cards in favor of using eSIM. This means the phone no longer has a SIM card tray, however, iPhones sold outside the US still have the SIM tray. This change sets Apple up for a future in which eSIM is ubiquitous, and the internal components can be rejiggered to take advantage of the vacated space. Apple iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus, display, the display is unchanged from the iPhone 13. Specifically, it has a 6.1-inch OLED display with a 60Hz refresh rate and 2532 by 1170 pixels, which equates to 460 pixels per inch. On the iPhone 14 Plus, the 6.7-inch OLED display with 60Hz refresh rate has more pixels for the larger size, 2778 by 1284, with a fractionally smaller pixel density, 458 pixels per inch. The display on each appeared the same to me in use, producing bright images at a maximum 800 nits brightness, and 1200 nits peak using HDR. It has a ceramic shield at the front to protect the glass, and the display and phone are water resistant up to 50 meters. Apple iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus, cameras, Apple's camera engineers are exceptional, and they've put a new main camera on these iPhones. Interestingly, it's different from the also new main camera on the Pro models. The iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus add a wider f/1.5 aperture lens and a larger image sensor with larger pixels. In software, Apple adds what it calls the photonic engine, which ramps up Apple's computational photography abilities by moving the process earlier into the workflow than before. This means deep fusion, Apple's term for stacking multiple images and sifting through them to create a richer final result, happens earlier in the computational pipeline, before any compression takes place. Apple iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Plus, verdict: it's true this iPhone looks like last year's model. It's true the display remains unchanged, and the rear camera's megapixel count is the same. And it's true it uses last year's Pro processor. Apple iPhone 14, should you upgrade? The iPhone 14 is a slick, responsive phone. Is it worth an upgrade from the iPhone 13, in the same way that the iPhone 14 Pro is worth the upgrade from the iPhone 13 Pro? No. But the iPhone 14 is certainly a great phone. The iPhone 13 is still available for $699, but I'd say the 14 is better, and well worth the extra $100 if you were considering an iPhone 13 today. If you want the best iPhone, then you need to go with the iPhone Pro or Pro Max. Yes, the prices are higher, but those models feel like a bigger upgrade than the 14 does. And if you can swing the extra bucks for a Pro over an iPhone 14, it's well worth it if for the Pro's better camera. But if an attractive, fast performer of a phone is all you're after, the iPhone 14 fits the bill. My expertise: I've been writing about tech longer than I care to remember. Most of the words I've written have been about phones, many of them before the word smartphone existed, back when Nokia owned most of the market and batteries lasted for days. I've tested every shape of phone, from soap bar to flip to slide to, I kid you not, lipstick. My first camera phone was a Nokia 7650 with a 0.3 megapixel sensor. Things have come a long way since then, but the importance of central elements has remained: ease of use, versatility, efficiency, and battery life. How I tested the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max: I've tested these phones extensively, from taking pictures in as many situations as possible to pushing the battery life to its limits with video playback, video streaming, using mapping apps to push the GPS connection, and so on. Of course, I've checked that video looks smooth on the screen and that the phones can, make and receive calls. I used common, familiar apps to vet they work faster than ever. And I've made sure the phones fit the hand, offer good value, and are a pleasure to pull out of your pocket and use.
Don't forget subscribe and share. This is Sam Cook Technology Channel.